The summons. The Galactic Imperial Council had stood for 12,000 cycles, an unshakable pillar of order in a chaotic universe. Its chamber floated in the void between stars, a crystalline structure that pulsed with the collective will of 47 civilized species. Today it would welcome its 48th. Chancellor Vexthar of the Kalthari adjusted his ceremonial circlet, its 6 obsidian gems catching the light from distant nebulae. His people had founded the council, establishing the sacred protocols that governed all spacefaring civilizations. Every species that had joined, from the methane-breathing Sorfians to the crystalline Luminates, had bowed to these ancient laws. The human delegation approaches, announced Keeper Zuen Mora, her luminescent tendrils flickering with barely concealed anxiety. As the council's historian, she had studied humanity extensively. What she'd found troubled her deeply. Through the viewing portal, a vessel materialized. Unlike the elegant bioships of the Valerians or the geometric perfection of Drellic cruisers, the human ship was a patchwork of conflicting technologies, fusion drives bolted to quantum cores, armor plating covering sections of transparent hull. It looked like it had been built by a committee that never agreed on anything. Irregular, muttered Admiral Cortrex of the Thanirian Empire, his 4 eyes narrowing in distaste. They can't even standardize their own vessel architecture. Vexthar raised a clawed hand for silence. We have extended the invitation. The humans have conquered their own solar system, developed faster-than-light travel, and established colonies on 17 worlds. By Protocol 7 they qualify for membership. The airlock hissed open and 3 humans entered. The lead human was a woman with dark skin and eyes that seemed to catalog everything in microseconds. She wore a simple uniform bearing no rank insignia, another irregularity. Behind her walked a man with silver-streaked hair and the easy posture of someone who'd seen combat, and a younger woman whose fingers never stopped moving, likely interfacing with some internal neural system. I am Captain Alia Okonkwo of the Terran Coalition, the lead human announced, her voice clear and unwavering. This is Colonel Marcus Reeves and Systems Analyst Priya Nakamura. Vexthar inclined his head precisely 45 degrees, the exact angle protocol demanded. Welcome humans. I am Chancellor Vexthar. The Imperial Council has deliberated on your petition for membership. We are prepared to grant it, contingent upon your acceptance of the sacred protocols. Alia's expression didn't change, but something in her stance shifted. We appreciate the welcome, Chancellor. We're eager to learn about these protocols. Keeper Zuen Mora stepped forward, producing a data crystal that contained 12,000 cycles of accumulated law. The sacred protocols govern all aspects of interstellar civilization. Military engagement, territorial expansion, resource extraction, technological development, and social organization. They have maintained peace and prosperity throughout the known galaxy. How many protocols are there? Priya asked, her fingers still dancing through unseen interfaces. 47,632 primary protocols, Zuen Mora replied. Each with subsidiary clauses and interpretive amendments. The complete legal framework encompasses approximately 18 million individual regulations. Marcus let out a low whistle. Alia shot him a look. That's comprehensive, Alia said diplomatically. How long do we have to review them? Vexthar's throat sac inflated slightly, the Kalthari equivalent of a satisfied smile. The standard acclimatization period is 120 cycles. During this time, a council representative will be assigned to guide your integration. You will be expected to restructure your government to comply with Protocol 9312 regarding hierarchical authority systems, reorganize your military according to protocol. Wait, Alia interrupted. The chamber fell silent. In 12,000 cycles, no petitioner had interrupted a chancellor mid-protocol recitation. Are you saying, Alia continued carefully, that we need to change our entire governmental system to join the council? Naturally, Vexthar replied, confusion creeping into his tone. All member species have done so. The protocols ensure uniformity, predictability, and peace. They eliminate the chaos that plagued the galaxy before the council's formation. Alia exchanged glances with her companions. Marcus's jaw tightened. Priya's fingers finally stopped moving. Chancellor, Alia said slowly, humanity has fought very hard for the right to govern ourselves according to our own principles. We have over 200 sovereign nations on Earth alone, each with their own systems and beliefs. Then they must be consolidated, Vexthar stated flatly. Protocol 9000. We'll need time to discuss this with our leadership, Alia cut in again. Admiral Cortrex's mandibles clacked in irritation. This is highly irregular. Aaliyah smiled, and there was something in that expression that made Keeper Mora's anxiety deepen into genuine concern. Chancellor, Aaliyah said, I think you're about to learn that irregular is humanity's default setting. The consultation. The human delegation reconvened aboard their ship, the TCS Wandering Star, in what they called the Situation Room, a space that would have horrified any council efficiency inspector. Coffee cups sat beside advanced holographic displays, handwritten notes cluttered a physical table, and someone had taped a cartoon to the wall depicting a stick figure giving the middle finger to a flowchart. 18 million regulations, Priya said, floating data streams around her like translucent ribbons. I've been analyzing the structure. It's actually worse than it sounds. The protocols contradict themselves in at least 40,000 places, which means there's an entire sub-bureaucracy dedicated to interpretation disputes. Aaliyah leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. Marcus, your assessment? The colonel pulled up military protocols, his expression darkening as he scrolled. They want us to standardize all weapon systems, eliminate national military forces, and consolidate into a single species defense fleet under council oversight. We'd have to decommission 80% of our ships and scrap every piece of technology that doesn't match their approved specifications. So we'd be defenseless while we rebuild everything to their standards, Aaliyah observed. For approximately 30 years according to their timeline, Marcus confirmed. And that's assuming perfect efficiency, which history suggests is optimistic. A holographic communication window opened, revealing Fleet Admiral Sarah Kwan, broadcasting from Earth. Her silver hair was pulled back severely, and her expression could have frozen helium. Captain Okonkwo, I've reviewed your preliminary report. Tell me the Imperial Council didn't actually demand we restructure our entire civilization. I wish I could, Admiral, Aaliyah replied. They're completely sincere. From their perspective, it's not even a demand, it's just how things are done. Then they're insane, said another voice as President James Chin appeared in a second window. Despite the late hour in Beijing, he was immaculately dressed, his weathered face thoughtful. Or they've never encountered anyone who said no. I'm betting on the latter, Mr. President, Aaliyah said. Keeper Mora, their historian, looked like she was expecting us to resist. But the Chancellor? He literally cannot conceive of non-compliance. It's not in his worldview. Priya highlighted a section of the protocols. Sir, I found something interesting. Protocol 1, the foundation of everything else, states that all civilized species recognize the inherent superiority of order over chaos, uniformity over diversity, and collective harmony over individual expression. That's not a rule, Marcus observed. That's a philosophy statement dressed up as law. Exactly, Priya agreed. And if you don't accept the fundamental premise, the entire structure becomes optional. President Chin leaned forward. Are you suggesting we reject council membership? I'm suggesting, Aaliyah said carefully, that we negotiate. They've had 12,000 years of everyone accepting their system. Maybe it's time someone showed them there's another way. Admiral Kwan's laugh was sharp. Captain, these aren't humans you can reason with over a beer. These are beings who've built their entire civilization on rigid adherence to rules. What makes you think they'll negotiate? Because they invited us, Aaliyah said. They didn't have to. We're not threatening them. We haven't violated any of their territory. They reached out because they saw us as potential equals. That means something. Or, Marcus countered, they saw us as potential subjects. Another species to bring into compliance. Aaliyah nodded slowly. That's the question we need to answer. Are they empire builders in disguise, or are they genuinely trying to maintain peace? President Chin was quiet for a long moment, his fingers steepled. Finally he spoke. Captain Okonkwo, I'm authorizing you to attempt negotiation. But understand this, humanity will not surrender our sovereignty. Not to the council, not to anyone. We've spent too long fighting for our freedom. Understood, sir. However, Chin continued, we're also not interested in making enemies of 47 spacefaring civilizations. Find a middle ground if one exists. If it doesn't... He paused, his expression hardening. We'll deal with that when we must. After the transmission ended, the three officers sat in silence. Finally, Priya spoke. They're going to reject any compromise. You know that, right? Organizations like the Council don't bend. They break or they endure. Maybe, Aaliyah admitted. But I have a theory. The Council has maintained peace for 12,000 years by making everyone follow the same rules. But what happens when someone follows different rules and still maintains peace? Marcus raised an eyebrow. You want to prove we can coexist without assimilation? I want to prove that their way isn't the only way, Aaliyah said. And if we have to break a few of their precious protocols to do it? She smiled that same concerning smile from the council chamber. Well, nobody ever said humanity was good at following instructions. The counteroffer. Chancellor Vexthar had prepared for many possible responses to the council's terms. In his 3 centuries of service, he'd seen species approach membership with gratitude, with humility, occasionally with awe. He had not prepared for what Captain Aaliyah Okonkwo presented the following day. A counteroffer? He repeated, his throat sac deflating in confusion. Yes, Chancellor, Aaliyah said, standing before the assembled council with the confidence of someone who'd negotiated arms treaties and planetary constitutions. We've reviewed the sacred protocols extensively, well, as extensively as one can review 18 million regulations in a day, and we have concerns. Keeper Zuen Mora's tendrils flickered amber, the color of scholarly interest. Concerns? Priya stepped forward, projecting a holographic analysis that filled the chamber. The protocols contain approximately 40,000 internal contradictions. Protocol 7234 mandates resource sharing between species, but Protocol 15889 establishes strict territorial sovereignty. Protocol 983 requires technological transparency, but Protocol 24556 protects intellectual property rights. You've built an entire judicial infrastructure just to arbitrate conflicts within your own legal code. A murmur rippled through the council. Several representatives exchanged glances. These contradictions, Vexthar said stiffly, are resolved through established interpretive frameworks governed by Protocol 45112 through 45889. Yes, Priya agreed. You've created rules to resolve conflicts between your rules. And rules to resolve conflicts between those rules. It's regulatory infinite regression. Admiral Courtrex rose, his exoskeleton clicking with agitation. This is absurd. The sacred protocols have maintained galactic peace for 12 millennia. No war has occurred between council members since the founding. That's true, Marcus acknowledged. But I've studied your military records. Wars haven't occurred because you've made conflict illegal, but because you've made genuine disagreement impossible. When everyone must think alike, fight alike, and organize alike, there's nothing left to fight about. You haven't eliminated war. You've eliminated diversity. The chamber erupted. Representatives from 47 species spoke simultaneously in a cacophony of protests, creating a chaos that ironically proved Marcus's point. Vexthar called for order, his voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics. Silence. The human speaks without understanding. The protocols protect us from the burning age, when species warred over ideology and independence. Millions died before we learned that unity requires uniformity. Or, Aaliyah interjected, her voice cutting through the settling noise, you traumatized yourselves into believing that control equals safety. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. Explain yourself, Vexthar demanded, his tone dangerously quiet. Aaliyah took a breath. This was the moment. Chancellor, we humans have a saying, those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. We've studied your history. The burning age was terrible, we won't minimize that. But your solution was to eliminate the conditions that allow conflict and the conditions that allow growth. Growth? Asked Zuen Mora, her tendrils now flickering red, concern. When was the last time a council species made a major technological breakthrough? Priya asked. I've reviewed your scientific databases. Innovation has been declining for 8,000 cycles. You've standardized yourselves into stagnation. Stability, Vexthar corrected. Stasis, Aaliyah countered. And we won't join you in it. Then you reject council membership? Admiral Courtrex asked, seeming almost pleased at the prospect. No, Aaliyah said, and now she smiled. We're proposing an alternative framework. Associate membership. We maintain our sovereignty, our governmental diversity, our military independence. In exchange, we agree to mutual defense pacts, open trade, cultural exchange, and diplomatic cooperation. Impossible, Vexthar declared. The protocols clearly state. The protocols were written by species who wanted safety above all else, Aaliyah interrupted. We want partnership. We want to share the stars with you, but as equals, not as subordinates. This would violate fundamental council structure, Zuen Mora said softly, but her tendrils had shifted to yellow, curiosity. No species has ever maintained sovereignty within the Council framework. Then let us be the first, Marcus said. Look at our history. Humanity has over 200 nations, dozens of governmental systems, countless ideologies. We've fought terrible wars. We've made horrifying mistakes. But we've also learned to coexist despite our differences. Not by eliminating diversity but by embracing it. You want to bring your chaos into our order, Admiral Cortrex accused. We want to bring our vitality into your stagnation, Aaliyah replied. You've had peace for 12,000 cycles. That's admirable. But what have you done with that peace? Where are your great works? Your expanding horizons? Your dreams? Vex there stood, his full height impressive even by Kalthari standards. The Council will deliberate on your proposal. But understand this, Captain Okonkwo, we do not compromise on the sacred protocols. We cannot. To do so would undermine everything we've built. Then we're at an impasse, Aaliyah said quietly. So it would seem, Vexthar agreed. As the humans departed, Keeper Zuen Mora approached the Chancellor. What will you recommend? Vexthar watched the irregular human ship through the viewport. That we reject their proposal absolutely. We cannot set a precedent of flexibility. The other species would demand the same. And if the humans proceed without our permission? Expand anyway? Vexthar's throat sac inflated with certainty. Then we will enforce Protocol 892. Unauthorized expansion by non-member species constitutes an act of aggression. We will blockade their territory. Zuen Mora's tendrils flickered deep crimson. Chancellor, I fear we may be making a terrible mistake. The mistake, Vexthar said firmly, would be bowing to chaos. The expansion. 3 months after the failed negotiations, the Imperial Council convened an emergency session. Chancellor Vexthar stood before a holographic display that showed what could only be described as organized chaos spreading through unclaimed space. They're building what? Admiral Cortrex demanded. Everything, Keeper Zuen Mora replied, her tendrils cycling through colors too rapidly to interpret, a sign of extreme distress. Stations, outposts, settlements. But nothing matches anything else. Each colony has a different governmental structure. Some are corporate ventures, others are religious communities, a few are apparently artist collectives. The display showed human expansion in real time. 17 existing colonies had ballooned to 43 in just 3 months. But what horrified the Council more than the speed was the variety. New Terra operated as a representative democracy. Harmony Station was governed by direct digital voting on every issue. The Freehold recognized no central authority at all, operating on something humans called voluntary association. Eden's Gate was a theocracy. Prometheus City was run by a corporate board. This violates Protocol 9312. Vexthar's throat sac was inflating and deflating rapidly. Governmental structure must be standardized within a species. They don't consider themselves bound by the protocols, Zuen Mora reminded him gently. We rejected their associate membership proposal. Because it was unacceptable. Regardless, they're expanding into unclaimed territory. By Protocol 47, species have the right to settle unoccupied space. Not like this. Admiral Cortrex gestured at the chaos. Look at their military deployments. No standardization whatsoever. Some colonies have defense fleets, others rely on mercenaries, a few have nothing but automated systems. It's impossible to predict their capabilities. That was what truly troubled the Council, Zuen Mora realized. For 12,000 cycles, they'd operated in a galaxy where every species was predictable. You knew how a Thenerian fleet would respond because Protocol 23,445 dictated exactly 37 permissible tactical formations. You knew how a Valerian colony would govern itself because Protocol 9312 specified the precise hierarchical structure. Humans? Humans were random. We received a communication this morning, Zuen Mora announced. From Captain Okonkwo. She requests permission to address the Council. Denied, Vexthar said immediately. We will not. Chancellor, interrupted Representative Sylvain of the Luminates, her crystalline structure refracting the chamber's light into rainbows. Perhaps we should hear what they have to say. Their expansion shows no signs of slowing. Ignoring them serves no purpose. After a tense pause, Vexthar nodded curtly. Aaliyah appeared via holographic transmission, broadcasting from the bridge of the Wandering Star. Behind her, the crew worked with practiced efficiency in what looked like controlled chaos. People moving, talking, gesturing at displays that floated in midair. Chancellor, Council members, thank you for accepting my transmission. You are in violation of 17 protocols, Vexthar stated flatly. We're not Council members, Aliyah replied calmly. We're not bound by your protocols. You operate within Council-claimed space. No, Chancellor. We operate in unclaimed space as is our right under Galactic Convention. Protocol 47, I believe. She smiled slightly. We've been reading. Admiral Cortrex leaned forward. Your expansion is reckless. Uncoordinated. Dangerous. A single species cannot maintain 43 different governmental systems. Why not? Marcus asked, appearing beside Aliyah. We've maintained over 200 on Earth for centuries. That's planetary governance. Interstellar civilization requires uniformity. Does it? Priya joined the transmission, data streams flowing around her. I've been running simulations. Human expansion is actually more stable than Council projections would suggest. Yes, we're diverse. But diversity provides redundancy. When one colony faces a problem, 42 others might have the solution. When one governmental system fails, we have dozens of alternatives to draw from. Your system is chaos, Vexthar insisted. Our system is adaptation, Aliyah corrected. And it's working. We're establishing trade agreements with non-Council species who've been too intimidated to approach you. We're sharing technology freely instead of through protocol-mandated approval processes that take decades. We're growing. You're threatening the stability of the galaxy. Aliyah's expression softened. Chancellor, we're not your enemy. We never wanted to be. We just wanted to be ourselves. Then you threaten everything the Council represents? Vexthar said quietly. No, Aliyah replied. We're proving that what the Council represents isn't the only option. And that's what really scares you, isn't it? Not that we'll destroy your system, but that we'll make it irrelevant. The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Keeper Zuin-Mora spoke carefully. She's right, Chancellor. In 3 months, humanity has accomplished what would take a Council species 3 years. And other species are watching. If humanity succeeds. They cannot be allowed to succeed, Vexthar interrupted. Admiral Cortrex, prepare the enforcement fleet. Humanity will learn that the Council's rules aren't optional. Protocol 892 is now in effect. We will blockade human space. Chancellor, Zuin-Mora protested, that's an act of war. No, Vexthar corrected. It's enforcement of galactic order. The humans will comply or they will be contained. As the Council moved to implement the blockade, none of them noticed Keeper Zuin-Mora quietly archiving everything. History she knew was about to be made. And she suspected the Chancellor was on the wrong side of it. The blockade. The Imperial Enforcement Fleet materialized at the edges of human-controlled space in perfect formation, exactly as Protocol 23445 dictated. 300 vessels arranged in the sacred geometry of containment, sphere, cube, and pyramid overlapping in mathematical precision. Admiral Cortrex observed from his flagship, the Eternal Order, with satisfaction. His 4 eyes tracked every ship in the formation, each exactly where it should be. This was how civilized species operated. With precision. With predictability. With order. Human vessels detected, his tactical officer reported. 73 ships. Various classifications. No standardization. Formation is. The officer paused, mandibles clicking in confusion. There is no formation, Admiral. They appear to be positioned randomly. Cortrex studied the display. The officer was right. Human ships clustered in groups with no apparent tactical logic. Some faced the blockade line, others had their backs turned. A few were actually perpendicular to both the blockade and each other. They're trying to confuse our sensors, he decided. Maintain position. Begin broadcasting the compliance demand. The message went out on all frequencies, translated into Earth's 300 languages. By authority of the Imperial Council and Protocol 892, human expansion is hereby suspended. All vessels will submit to Council inspection. All colonies will accept Council oversight. Resistance will be met with appropriate force. For exactly 90 seconds, the time protocol allowed for compliance consideration, nothing happened. Then the humans responded. But not with a message. Every human ship began moving simultaneously, but not in any formation the Council fleet recognized. They scattered like startled fish, some diving down relative to the galactic plane, others spiraling up, a few charging directly at the blockade line before veering off at impossible angles. Evasive maneuvers. Courtrex shouted. Maintain formation. But the Council fleet, bound by protocol, moved in the prescribed defensive pattern. Sphere contracting, cube rotating, pyramid inverting. Beautiful. Precise. Predictable. The humans exploited every gap. A human corvette, smaller than a Council scout ship, threaded between two destroyers with centimeters to spare. A massive freight hauler, which should have been slow and cumbersome, performed a rotation that would have torn apart a properly designed vessel. Fighters that looked like they'd been assembled from spare parts danced through the blockade like leaves in a storm. They're breaking through, the tactical officer reported unnecessarily. Impossible. The blockade formation has never been breached. They're not trying to breach it, Admiral. They're ignoring it. They're treating it like an obstacle course. Within minutes, 40 human ships had passed through the blockade. The remaining 33? They'd never been planning to leave. They'd been decoys, distractions, chaos makers. Courtrex's exoskeleton flushed with shame and rage. Pursue. Protocol 23446. Pursuit formation. The fleet began its prescribed reorganization. It would take approximately 4 minutes to transition from blockade to pursuit configuration. In 4 minutes, the human ships would be gone. Aboard the Wandering Star, Aaliyah allowed herself a small smile as the tactical display showed green markers pulling away from the blockade. All ships report successful passage, Marcus announced. 0 casualties. The Council fleet is attempting to reorganize for pursuit. Let me guess, Aaliyah said. They're following their protocols? Formation change in progress. Estimated completion, 3 minutes, 40 seconds. More than enough time. Aaliyah opened a channel. Council fleet, this is Captain Okonkwo. We have no desire for conflict. We've harmed none of your vessels. We simply exercised our right to free navigation through unclaimed space. Admiral Courtrex's face appeared on screen, his fury barely contained. You violated a Council blockade. We navigated around a fleet positioned in international space, Aaliyah corrected. That's not the same thing. You're welcome to maintain your formation, Admiral. But you should know, we're not going to stop expanding. We're not going to stop being who we are. And your protocols can't contain chaos. They can only react to it. You think you've won? Courtrex demanded. The Council has resources you cannot imagine. We will mass fleets. We will establish permanent containment. We will spend enormous amounts of time and energy trying to control people who refuse to be controlled, Aaliyah interrupted. Yes, Admiral. You probably will. And while you're doing that, we'll be out here building, trading, growing, and living. The question is, how long before you realize you're fighting the wrong battle? She closed the channel. Marcus looked at her. You know they won't give up. I know. But we've proved something important today. Their system can't adapt. Ours can. That's going to matter in the long run. Assuming we survive the short run, Priya pointed out. Details? Aaliyah said, but her smile faded. Marcus, what's our worst-case assessment? If the Council commits fully, they could overwhelm us through sheer numbers. We're more maneuverable, more creative, more adaptable. But they have 47 species worth of resources. Then we'd better make sure they don't commit fully, Aaliyah said. Priya, remember those non-Council species we've been trading with? The Rixkal Collective, the Moran tribes, and the Scattered Worlds? Yes. How would they feel about a mutual defense pact? Nothing formal. Just an understanding that we watch each other's backs. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You're building an alliance outside Council control. I'm building relationships based on mutual benefit instead of enforced compliance, Aaliyah corrected. There's a difference. The Council won't see it that way. The Council, Aaliyah said quietly, is about to learn that the galaxy is bigger than their protocols. Whether they like it or not. The fracture, 800 words. 6 months after the failed blockade, cracks began appearing in the Council's perfect facade. It started with the Scattered Worlds, 7 species that had never formally joined the Council, existing in a gray area of galactic politics. They'd always been too small, too disorganized, or too stubborn to submit to the protocols. The Council had tolerated them as curiosities, primitive holdouts from a less enlightened age. Then humanity offered them trade agreements, technology sharing, mutual defense. Nothing that violated Council law, because the Scattered Worlds weren't Council members. But everything that demonstrated there was an alternative to the Council's monopoly on interstellar civilization. Within weeks, the Scattered Worlds' economies began booming. Human technology, messy, unstandardized but effective, flowed freely. In exchange, humans gained access to resources and knowledge that the Council had hoarded for millennia. Keeper Zuen Mora presented her report to an increasingly agitated Council chamber. The RixKL collective has increased its industrial output by 40%, she announced, her tendrils a steady orange, concern mixed with fascination. The Moran tribes have established 17 new settlements. The Yovar Empire, which has been in decline for 3 centuries, is experiencing a cultural renaissance. All of them attribute their growth to human partnership. Partnership, Vexler repeated, his throat sac deflating. They mean corruption of proper order. Do they? Asked Representative Sylvain. The Luminate had been growing increasingly vocal in recent sessions. I've been reviewing the data. These non-council species are thriving. Meanwhile, our own growth has been stagnant. Stable, Admiral Courtrex corrected sharply. We are stable. We are ossified, Sylvain replied, her crystalline structure refracting light in sharp, aggressive angles. When was the last time we innovated? When was the last time we grew? We've been so focused on maintaining order that we've forgotten how to live. The chamber erupted in argument. For the first time in 12,000 cycles, council members were openly disagreeing about fundamental principles. Vexler called for order, but it took longer than it should have. Much longer. The real fracture came from an unexpected source. The Valerians were one of the council's oldest members, their bioships living vessels that had sailed the stars for 10,000 cycles. They'd always been perfect council citizens, orderly, compliant, predictable. Until a Valerian exploration ship encountered a human research station at the edge of known space. Dr. Elena Vasquez was a xenobiologist who'd spent her career studying adaptive systems. When the Valerian ship Harmonious Purpose approached her station, she did what any human would do, invited them for coffee and conversation. What followed was, from the council's perspective, a disaster. Captain Relvin of the Harmonious Purpose had never experienced anything like human discourse. Elena didn't present facts as absolute truths. She questioned her own assumptions. She proposed hypotheses, then cheerfully tore them apart. She admitted ignorance without shame and treated knowledge as something to be pursued rather than possessed. Most revolutionary of all, she listened. Not to catalog information for proper filing according to protocol, but to actually consider perspectives different from her own. You change your mind, Relvin observed, his vocal harmonics expressing confusion. You stated that silicon-based life was unlikely to evolve naturally. Then I presented our data on the crystalline wastes. And you changed your position. Elena laughed. Of course I did. You showed me I was wrong. That's how learning works. But Protocol 34556 clearly states that positions, once taken, must be defended unless formally disproven through the Council's verification process, which takes approximately 17 cycles. That's insane, Elena said. Why would you wait 17 years to admit you're wrong when you could just admit it now and move on to being right? Relvin's bioship pulsed with colors that had no protocol-approved meaning. We are taught that changing positions shows inconsistency. Weakness. We're taught that refusing to change shows stubbornness. Stupidity. Elena leaned forward. Captain, what do you personally think about the Council's protocols? I am not permitted to have personal thoughts that diverge from Council consensus. But you do have them, don't you? The silence stretched. Finally, yes. When the Harmonious Purpose returned to Council space, Captain Relvin did something unprecedented. He filed a report that questioned protocol itself. The humans operate without our structure, he wrote, yet they achieve results we cannot match. They disagree constantly, yet they cooperate effectively. They have no central authority, yet they maintain order. I formally request the Council consider whether our protocols serve us, or whether we serve our protocols. The report created chaos. 3 species immediately filed demands that Relvin be disciplined for protocol violations. 2 others quietly circulated his report among their own populations. 5 submitted formal questions to the Council about outdated regulations they'd never dared challenge before. The perfect unity of the Imperial Council began to crack. And on Earth, in a small office overlooking the Pacific Ocean, President Chin read the reports with a slight smile. Captain Okonkwo was right, he murmured. We didn't need to defeat them. We just needed to show them there was another way. Will they adapt? Asked Admiral Kwan, standing beside him. Some will, Chin replied. Some won't. But the galaxy they knew is already gone. They just haven't realized it yet. In the council chamber, Chancellor Vex there stared at the growing mountain of queries, complaints, and questions from species who'd been silent for millennia. Keeper Zuin Mora, he said quietly. What have the humans done to us? They've given us a choice, she replied. Perhaps for the first time in 12,000 cycles. I hate choices, Vexthar whispered. Part 7. The New Order, 800 words. 2 years after humanity's first contact with the Imperial Council, Chancellor Vexthar stood before a chamber that barely resembled the one he'd presided over for 3 centuries. Where once there had been perfect geometric seating for 47 species, there was now controlled chaos. Some representatives sat in their traditional positions. Others had rearranged themselves into informal clusters. The Luminates had created a crystalline discussion area where multiple species gathered to debate issues before formal votes. It was horrifying. It was irregular. It was, Vexthar was beginning to reluctantly admit, more alive than the council had been in millennia. The vote count is complete, Keeper Zuin Mora announced, her tendrils a steady blue, cautious optimism. 32 species vote to accept the revised framework. 11 vote to maintain the original protocols. 4 abstain. The revised framework. Even the name was a compromise, carefully avoiding the word change that so terrified traditional council members while acknowledging that something fundamental had shifted. Under the new system, council members could choose their level of integration. Species could maintain full protocol compliance if they wished. Or they could operate under associate status like humanity, maintaining sovereignty while participating in mutual defense, trade, and cultural exchange. Most revolutionary, species could change their status. Adapt. Grow. This is a mistake, Admiral Kortrek said, though his voice lacked its former conviction. His own people, the Thanirians, had voted for the revised framework. He'd been overruled by his own government, something that would have been impossible under the old protocols. Perhaps, Vexthar acknowledged. But it is a mistake we must make. He activated the main view screen. Humanity's expansion had continued unabated. 97 colonies now, each one different, each one thriving in its own chaotic way. But they'd been joined by others. Valerian explorer ships that no longer followed prescribed routes. Rix-KL settlements that experimented with new governmental forms. Even a few Kalthari colonies, Vexthar's own species, had requested associate status. The galaxy was changing. The council could change with it or become irrelevant. Captain Alia Okonkwo stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, humanity's first joint construction with council species. The station itself was a masterpiece of collaborative chaos. Human modular design merged with Valerian bioarchitecture. Luminate crystalline structures interfaced with Moran tribal aesthetics. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. Penny for your thoughts? Marcus asked, joining her at the viewport. Just reflecting on how far we've come, Alia replied. 2 years ago we were being told to dismantle our civilization. Now we're helping them rebuild theirs. Some of them still hate us, Marcus observed. Kortrex will never forgive us for breaking his perfect blockade. No, Alia agreed. But his children might. I met a young Thanirian officer yesterday who asked if she could intern on the Wandering Star. She wants to learn adaptive tactics. That's what she called it. Adaptive tactics. Priya's voice came through their neural comms. You both should see this. New data just came in from the exploration frontier. They found Priya in the station's central hub, surrounded by holographic star charts. The Council's been tracking something they call the Silence, a region of space where advanced civilizations have disappeared. They've been studying it for 5,000 cycles, making no progress. Wanna guess who just made first contact with one of the Silent species? Human explorers? Marcus guessed. A joint human-Valerian scattered worlds expedition, Priya corrected. They didn't follow Council protocols for first contact. They just talked to them, shared food, played music, made friends. And? Alia prompted. And the Silent species? They're not hostile. They're hiding. Specifically, they're hiding from what they call the homogenizers, species that demand conformity. They've been avoiding the Council for 6,000 cycles. Oh, that's going to be an interesting conversation in the Council chamber, Marcus muttered. Alia smiled. It's more than that. It's proof. The Council's approach wasn't just stagnant, it was actively limiting. How many other species are out there, avoiding contact because they don't want to surrender their identity? The galaxy just got bigger, Priya said. No, Alia corrected. The galaxy was always this big. We just couldn't see it because we were looking through the council's lens. 6 months later, Chancellor Vexthar did something unprecedented. He requested a private meeting with Captain Okonkwo. They met in a neutral garden aboard Unity Station, a space designed by human landscape architects and luminate light sculptors, producing something neither species could have created alone. "I owe you an apology," Vexthar said without preamble. Aaliyah raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't expecting that. When you first addressed the council, I told you that we could not compromise on the sacred protocols. That to do so would undermine everything we'd built." "I remember. I was correct," Vexthar continued. "Accepting your proposal did undermine everything we'd built. But I was wrong about what that meant." His throat sac inflated slowly, a gesture of deep consideration. "We had built a prison. Beautiful, orderly, peaceful. But still a prison. You showed us the bars. We just wanted to be ourselves," Aaliyah said quietly. "Yes. And in doing so, you reminded us that we'd forgotten how to be ourselves. The Kalthari were once explorers, Captain. Philosophers. Dreamers. We gave all that up for the certainty of the protocols. We thought we were choosing peace. We were actually choosing sleep." "So what now?" Aaliyah asked. Vexthar gestured to the garden around them. "Now we wake up. And we learn from you. Not to become human, that would be its own form of uniformity. But to remember that order and diversity are not opposites. That peace can exist without sameness. That the galaxy is vast enough for many ways of being." He paused, then asked, "Tell me, Captain, what do humans call someone who refuses to follow the rules?" Aaliyah smiled. "Depends on the context. Rebel. Revolutionary. Innovator. Free thinker. And what do you call someone who makes new rules?" "A leader." Vexthar's throat sac pulsed with something that might have been satisfaction. "Then perhaps it's time the council learned to lead rather than simply enforce. We have 12,000 cycles of experience maintaining order. Perhaps, with your help, we can learn to maintain growth as well." 20 years later, the Imperial Council, now officially the Galactic Cooperative Council, had expanded to include 73 member species and 42 associate partners. The sacred protocol still existed, but they'd been reduced to 300 core principles focused on mutual respect, fair trade, and conflict resolution. Everything else? Subject to adaptation, interpretation, and local variation. Humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization wasn't technology or tactics. It was the simple, revolutionary idea that rules should serve life, not the other way around. And in a small museum on Earth, carefully preserved under archival glass, hung a cartoon that had once been taped to a wall on the TCS Wandering Star, a stick figure giving the middle finger to a flowchart. Beneath it, a plaque read, "The Imperial Council's biggest mistake was assuming humans would follow the rules. Their greatest growth came from learning why we didn't." Keeper Zuen Mora, now chief historian of the Cooperative Council, visited that museum every year. And every year her tendrils glowed with the deep blue of contentment. History she'd learned from the humans wasn't about recording what had been. It was about enabling what could be. And the future, irregular and chaotic and beautiful, stretched out before them all.